The story begins with our protagonist Waki Hashira passing away and awakening in an open space. Hashira is then greeted by Elfiura, who introduces herself as the goddess of plants. Seeing Hashira's confused expression, Elfiura asks him to calm down while she transports him to a vast area filled with grass. Hashira is caught off guard when the roots suddenly move on their own and shape into chairs and a table. Another god, Aris, calls Elfiura's attention, asking her to stop changing someone's space without permission. Elfiura introduces Aris to Hashira as the god who oversees the earth. She reveals that the place they are currently in is called the Divine Realm, the god's domain. Elfiura explains that she asked Aris to bring Hashira to their domain, piquing Hashira's curiosity about the reason. However, Hashira is immediately in total disbelief when Elfiura informs him that he has passed away. Elfiura informs Hashira that he worked so hard to support his family that he died falling off the stairs due to overworking. After recalling his death, Aris explains that Hashira's soul would have disappeared and reformed into something new. But Elfiura asked him to wait. Curious as to why Elfiura spared him, she expresses that she likes Hashira because he once repaired her rundown shrine when he was still young. Hashira then remembers the shrine near his grandparents' home. Elfiura shares that because of Hashira's actions, many people started visiting her shrine again, and the faith that had once faded returned. Grateful for Hashira's actions, Elfiura decides to watch over him from then on. Pleased with Elfiura's words, Hashira still cannot help but wonder why his life did not become any better. When Elfiura apologizes for not doing anything while Hashira was alive, he does not mind, thinking it would not make sense to rely on gods only when it is convenient. Aris agrees with Hashira's words, having witnessed people not believing in gods, but trying to cling to them only in times of need. The gods reveal that Hashira now has the opportunity to be reborn in another world. After Aris explains the similarities and differences of the other worlds, Elfiura clarifies that instead of reincarnating, Hashira will be transmigrated. They remind Hashira that if he declines the offer, his soul will vanish, and an entirely new soul will form. After presenting the options, Elfiura expresses that since Hashira struggled in his previous life, she only wishes for him to be free and live as he pleases. When tears suddenly come out of Hashira's eyes, Elfiura hugs and praises him for surviving and doing his very best as the eldest son. After crying his eyes out, Hashira apologizes and tells them his decision to be transmigrated. Pleased with Hashira's decision, Elfiura asks if there is anything he wants to do in the other world. After thinking about his ideal life, Hashira wishes to live leisurely in the countryside brimming with nature, just like when he was living at his old home. As the goddess of nature, Elfiura gives Hashira her blessing. When a ball of light enters Hashira's body, Aris explains that the blessing of the plant goddess is perfect for growing crops, ensuring Hashira will never worry about starvation. Confused as he cannot sense anything, Elfiura explains that once Hashira's body forms, he will feel the gift she planted on him. After giving Hashira a staff as another gift, Elfiura explains that it is a divine instrument to help control the power of the blessing more easily. After informing Hashira that he can manipulate the shape of the instrument, Hashira is surprised when the staff suddenly changes its shape in his hands. After transforming the instrument into a wand, Hashira finds it very useful. After Aris also granted Hashira his blessing, he decided to transport Hashira to a more naturally abundant place. Agreeing with Aris's decision, Hashira received encouragement from the gods before being transmigrated. After leaving the Divine Realm, Hashira woke up inside a forest. Surprised that his clothes had changed, Hashira assumed that the gods had altered them so that he would match the other world's farmers. Successfully transmigrated, Hashira was amazed by the enormity of the trees, as he had never seen such a thing before. Hashira had expected to be transported to rural scenery that he was used to, but instead he found himself in a vast forest. Thinking that he might have a hard time living in such an environment, Hashira was surprised when he noticed that he could clear space and build a house by digging up the trees. Confused by the strange power inside him, Hashira then realized that he could naturally understand what needed to be done while using his staff to take down trees. Amazed that he could easily control the vines, Hashira remembered that it was the same when Elfiura created the chairs. After recalling his grandparents' house, Hashira was able to recreate it in no time. Feeling nostalgic, Hashira noticed that there were no tatami mats inside the room. Checking the bath and kitchen, Hashira realized that he needed water and decided to look for some outside. While walking through the forest, Hashira found the plant goddess's blessing very useful, as he could easily walk on beast trails and understand the details of the plants from the other world. Picking vegetables, he became excited as it was rare to obtain wild vegetables in the city. Seeing the fruit called gravaringo, Hashira took a bite of it and found it very delicious. He then decided to harvest some to eat at home. After putting the fruits in the basket, Hashira heard the sound of water. When he finally saw water, Hashira was surprised at how vast the lake was. Seeing how clear and beautiful the water was, It made Hashira wish that he had a hook and line so he could try to fish. Hearing a rustling sound behind the bushes, Hashira took a peek and was surprised to find a strange-looking deer. Based on its appearance, Hashira assumed that the animal was herbivorous. Even though he liked vegetables and fruits, Hashira could not help but drool over the thought of meat. When the wild deer left the area, Hashira did not want to miss his opportunity and used his staff to tie the wild deer down. Creating a wooden knife, Hashira apologized to the wild deer before taking its life. After disemboweling the wild deer and separating the organs, Hashira moved the dead deer into running water to remove the remaining blood from the body. Hashira was happy that he did not forget his uncle's stories on butchering a wild animal. Realizing that he was surviving rather than farming, Hashira wondered if he could really live freely moving forward. While enjoying the view, Hashira noticed that the sun was tilting and he decided to head back home. Though he did not know what would happen, Hashira only hoped that he could live a fulfilling life. Inside his home, Hashira tried to make fire using friction. Unfortunately, he could not succeed. While pondering how his grandfather effortlessly created a fire, Hashira noticed that it was getting dark and realized the urgency of making a fire quickly. Hashira remembered the time they started a fire using primitive tools. Wishing for help in assembling the woods, Hashira was surprised when he suddenly gained specific information. Using Elfuria's blessing, Hashira was amazed to create a golem out of wood. After giving instructions to the golem and assisting in making fire, Hashira became ecstatic when they finally got a flame. Relieved that he secured some light, Hashira was frightened when he saw the golem emerging from the darkness. Hashira noticed that the golem went far just to urinate. Realizing that the golem was scared of the fire. Recognizing the golem's weakness, Hashira apologized and reassured it that it would be safe if it stayed away from the fire. As the night went on, Hashira decided to prepare his dinner using the edible foods he had gathered all day. After observing the plants and fruits, Hashira noticed that the amaguri chestnuts were a bit similar to sugarcane plants, while the pink cherries looked like sakurenbo. Wanting to boil the vegetables before eating them, Hashira faced another problem. He did not have a pot to use. After tasting the cherry, Hashira thought of an idea to try carving some stone into makeshift pans or pots. As he suddenly felt sleepy, Hashira decided to make them the next day. As a replacement for the futon, Hashira used leaves instead. After saying goodnight to the golem, Hashira spent the night sleeping peacefully. When Hashira finally woke up, he was excited as he had lots of things to do. Before making the pots, Hashira decided to first plant the gravaringo and pink cherry seeds to start a farm. After securing an open space, Hashira then started plowing the dirt. Hashira was yet again amazed by the divine tools as they could dig away nice and quick even though they were fully wooden. When the golem saw Hashira plowing, it went up to him with the intention of helping with the farm. After creating a hoe for the golem, Hashira instructed it to start working on the other side. When they finished plowing the ground, Hashira then started planting the seeds. The two then went into the lake to get some water and poured it in the field. After finishing the preparations, Hashira used Elfuria's blessing to fasten the growth of the plants. Amazed at how fast the plants grew, Hashira noticed how the soil was easily drained. He then decided to use his power gradually to maintain the balance. While taking a short break, Hashira was pleased at how peaceful the place was, which made him curious about his family's situation. Hashira felt as if he was running away from his responsibilities even though he had already died. Realizing that he was getting emotional, Hashira remembered that he still needed to eat. Calling the golem's attention, Hashira informed it that they were about to head into the forest to look for new crops and hunt for some food. Thinking that it was getting lame calling his creation just Golem, Hashira wondered what name was good for it. When Hashira suggested Kotaro, his suggestion was immediately shut down. After some time, the two ended up agreeing on the name Rent. Hashira was now pleased as he greeted Rent. After explaining his plans to Rent, Hashira asked for Rent's help in carrying the stone. When Hashira found the huge rock, he then used Elfura's magic to create a wooden knife. With just one slice of the wooden knife, it terrified Hashira, since it cut the rock like tofu. Realizing that the power of divine protection could do various things depending on how it is used, Hashira plans to practice and test it one more time. After successfully cutting the rocks he needed, Hashira was really grateful for Rent's strength as it carried the pile of rocks like they were nothing. While picking some plants, Rent caught Hashira's attention as he pointed out a new crop. After observing the fruit, Hashira learned that its name was oligo and that it was the olive of the other world. After observing his surroundings, Hashira became ecstatic as he could not believe he found more vegetables and fruits. With oil and vegetables combined, Hashira salivated while thinking of deep frying the foods. Though he did not have any condiments, Hashira was still glad as he could not wait to experience the joy of eating the wild vegetables. While putting the new crops in his basket, Hashira became excited at the thought of making fields for herbs and medicinal plants. After deciding to return home, Hashira immediately started with his plans and created a small cabin. Hashira informed Rent that he had made a butchering shed and asked Rent to bring the deer inside for him. After placing the deer on the table, Hashira immediately went to work and started carving off the deer's skin. After he successfully removed the meat from the deer, Hashira then cut it into large pieces. As he planned to preserve the meat, Hashira was worried that using leaves with preservatives might not work. Hashira only wished they had a cellar, as it was the much better option for preserving meat. After creating a shovel, Hashira ordered Rent to dig a cellar in the corner of the room and prepare the timber for reinforcement outside. After assigning Rent the task, Hashira left to plant the seedlings he had collected. Hashira first dug a hole and poured water into it. After waiting for it to drain, Hashira then carefully removed the root and placed the seed into the hole. After covering the hole and applying a little pressure, Hashira then applied water generously around the base and then used his skill, growth promotion, to increase the growth speed of the plant. Pleased that the seeds had sprouted beautifully, Hashira noticed that the fields had gotten a bit cramped after planting more crops, so he decided to expand the field a bit more. After finishing his task with the field, Hashira returned to the butchering shed to check on the progress of the cellar. Upon learning that Rent was pleased with his work on the cellar, Hashira inspected it and was amazed by the cellar that Rent created. Happy about the solid reinforcements, Hashira decided to make some shelves and instructed Rent to bring the deer inside the cellar. Noticing that the cellar was getting cold, Hashira immediately finished the shelves so he could still prepare his dinner. Hashira was beyond happy as he could finally have meat for dinner. Even though he was not sure what the meat would taste like, Hashira still did not mind since it was still meat. Disappointed in not having salt and pepper, Hashira was still glad that he had the oligo fruit to try and roast it on the stone. Thinking on how to open up the oligo fruit, Hashira thought of an idea and asked Rent to squeeze the fruit and collect the oil in the bowl. While Rent was busy with the oil, Hashira decided to first boil the vegetables. Amazed after seeing the stone pot boil, Hashira then thought what other things he could do with the stone pot. After examining the wild vegetables he picked, Hashira found that the fuki needs to be rubbed with salt and boiled in water. The zenmai needs baking soda for removing the bitterness, but since the item was not available, Hashira plans to use coal instead. Unfortunately, it was impossible to make as of right now. Hashira decided to just use the vegetables that he picked on his first day. Surprised by the sound of the oligo fruit being squashed, Hashira was grateful for Rent's help. After rinsing the boiled vegetables with cold water, Hashira then started to grill the meat while putting some oil on the heated stone. After some time, Hashira successfully cooked the meat with oligo oil. As Hashira was about to eat, he realized that Rent could not eat and decided to give him water instead. Pleased with having company while eating, Hashira decided to taste the wild vegetables first. After sharing some opinions about the vegetables, Hashira was ecstatic to finally taste the meat. Thinking it was already late, Hashira still apologized to Elfura for using the divine tool as a substitute for cutlery. When Hashira finally tasted the meat, he was surprised since it was so tender. Even though the meat was delicious, Hashira was still concerned about how fresh the scent was and the bitterness of the oil. Staring at the fire, Hashira realized that his experience was more like camping rather than farming. Hashira wondered if he would also miss the gummy and robust flavor of the meat. With nothing to do, Hashira tried practicing his control of the blessing. Realizing that it was much harder than he thought, Hashira accidentally fell from the tree he had cast. Hashira planned to increase his efficiency in controlling Elfuria's blessing so he could move easily by just riding the tree he had cast. He then wondered if he could use the vines to fix himself in place, then move with the tree without falling. In his field, Hashira was busy removing the weeds. Seeing how the plants were growing healthily, Hashira was yet again amazed by the power of Elfuria's blessing, as he could harvest in just a few days. Fruits that usually took years to grow now only took a matter of days. After harvesting a few more wild vegetables, Hashira boiled and tasted them, and discovered something surprising. The crops that Hashira cultivated were much tastier than those of the wild vegetables. Wondering if there was some sort of byproduct of the blessing, Hashira did not look into it further since he was fine as long as it produced delicious food. This made Hashira more enthusiastic, which gave him the idea to expand his farm before noon arrived. After being temporarily depressed about the struggles of farming alone, Hashira encouraged himself, as he had already been given a blessing to make his life easier. All of a sudden, Hashira smelled a delicious aroma, which prompted him to take a break and check on other things. Arriving at the source of the smoke, Hashira thanked Rent for watching over things. When Hashira opened his small smokehouse, he was amazed at how perfectly smoked the meat was. After storing the meat away from the sun, Hashira realized that he had too much meat, and that he could not eat it all by himself. Since Hashira did not know the exact process of smoking meat, he was not sure how long the meat would last. This just encouraged Hashira even more to acquire spices. Missing the sea, Hashira then wondered if there were herbs nearby that he could use. Hashira called Rent as they were about to check the area for some herbs. Noticing that the sun was about to set soon, Hashira decided not to venture deep into the woods. While walking around the forest, Hashira noticed medicinal herbs among the weeds. After harvesting the wild herbs, Hashira decided to prepare a dedicated field for medicinal herbs. While removing a herb from the ground, Hashira noticed a familiar smell. After checking the plant's details, Hashira found that the plant called Hutwinia contained antibacterial components and is effective for suppurative swellings. The plant made Hashira reminisce about how her grandmother used to use the plant with boiling water, knowing that in his current living situation, having the Hutwinia was necessary. Planning to transplant some of the Hutwinia to the field, Hashira was still glad that he found such a plant even though he didn't find that many herbs. After climbing a tree, Hashira saw a peculiar-looking fruit. After checking its details, Hashira was surprised to learn that the fruit was comparable to bread. Overjoyed by the newly discovered fruit, Hashira immediately tested it out. After having a piece of the mochi fruit, Hashira immediately thought of ways he could use the fruit to make bread. After harvesting more of the fruit, Hashira then thought that it would be delicious paired with smoked meat. While picking off some of the mochi fruits, Hashira noticed a strong, disgusting smell, to which he then realized that it was coming from him all along. Realizing how stinky he was, it encouraged Hashira more to take a bath. After informing Rent that they were going to take a bath, the two then headed out to the lake. Hashira first made a bathtub by summoning planks of wood. After forming the tub, Hashira tasked Rent with filling the tub with water using the bucket he had created. Knowing that it was unfair to always rely on Rent, Hashira went ahead and started a fire. He then heated some stones and immediately placed them inside the tub as soon as the stones turned a nice red color. After setting up a slate near his feet, Hashira then successfully completed the bathtub. Without delay, Hashira took off his clothes and jumped inside the bathtub. Enjoying the warm water, Hashira was even more pleased as he noticed that he had a nice view of the lake and mountains. Deciding to take a bath daily, Hashira noticed Rent from the side and asked if Rent also wanted to take a bath. Deciding to take turns in the bathtub, Hashira poured water on Rent first and removed the dirt before he went in the tub. Hashira was pleased knowing that Rent was content with the bathtub. As the sun was about to set, Hashira put the fire out. As he told Rent that they were about to head back home, Hashira was curious about what Rent was looking at. Hashira was surprised upon seeing an elf laying on the ground. As he recalled that Elfuria mentioned that the world was inhabited by various species, Hashira saw that the elf was badly injured. Knowing that the basic medicine he had wouldn't be enough, Hashira used his clothes to wrap the wound and had Rent carry the elf. Realizing that it was the right time to show the results of his practice, using his staff, Hashira summoned vines to secure himself in place. He then cast the tree and flew them back to his home at an amazing speed. A couple of hours before Hashira and Rent found the elf, she was trying to escape while enduring the wounds inflicted by the armored bear. As the elf attempted to stop the bleeding, she no longer had enough strength to move and ended up fainting near a log. When the elf finally woke up, she was in shock since she was no longer wearing any clothes. When Hashira greeted her, she immediately jumped on top of him. Curious about Hashira and what he had done to her while she was unconscious, the elf was surprised upon seeing Rent and ended up thrown against the wall. While trying to calm the elf down, Hashira explained to her that she was safe thanks to Rent. However, Hashira was in total shock when the elf accused him of having ill intentions towards her. Hashira apologized for the weapon and admitted it was his mistake. He then clarified that the object he was holding was not a weapon, and that they had no intention of harming her. As the elf started to believe Hashira's words, he then explained that he had pulled her out of the river. The elf's body was injured, soaking wet and bleeding all over. The elf finally remembered that she was attacked by a monster in the Forest of Death and got injured. However, she became curious as to why her wound did not hurt anymore. After clarifying that it was Rent who removed her clothing, Hashira then instructed Rent to release the elf from her restraints. After Rent removed the restraints, the elf was surprised when the wound she received from the armored bear was gone. When Hashira asked if the elf was now willing to listen, he explained that it was thanks to the medicine he applied that saved her life. The elf found it strange since wounds normally do not heal so fast with just medicine. The elf's attention was once again drawn to the knife, as Hashira mentioned that it was not a weapon, but it was sharp enough to carve stone. The elf was puzzled when Hashira explained that he was carving the stone to make a cup. Hashira did not expect it when the elf apologized for attacking him. Hashira also apologized for causing the misunderstanding on his part. When the elf finally calmed down, Hashira introduced himself as Pillar. The elf also introduced herself as Lydia. She then clarified that she was not an elf but rather a high elf. Hashira, who was curious, asked about the difference between the two. Lydia explained that high elves have longer lifespans and higher magical powers. Lydia still admitted that she was no match against an armored bear or a Gaia note. Lydia finally accepted the fact that the monsters of the Forest of Death are on another level. Noticing that Lydia kept mentioning the Forest of Death, Hashira asked if she was referring to the forest they were located in. Lydia responded to Hashira's question that it was, and the forest spans 1/4 of the land within the demon kingdom Belgios. After sharing that the monsters residing in the forest are deemed monstrous class, Lydia was surprised that Hashira lived in the forest without knowing such vital information. When Hashira asked Lydia what she was doing inside the Forest of Death, Lydia explained that, as a high elf, she wanted to see the abundant nature with her own eyes. Not expecting that Lydia would venture into the Forest of Death just to see nature, Hashira just thought that Lydia had a taste for nature. Lydia became embarrassed and explained that she was getting bored after living for so long. When Lydia guessed what Hashira was thinking, he immediately apologized and asked what kind of monster a Gaia note was. When Lydia pointed to Rent and told Hashira that Rent was a Gaia note, he became confused and asked if he was talking about Rent. Hashira explained that Rent was a wooden golem he created, to which Lydia found it hard to believe since golems are not capable of producing agile movements. Lydia then explained that a Gaia note is a kind of spirit that is said to be a guardian of nature. After learning more about Rent's origin, Hashira became more impressed. Realizing that Hashira was living with a Gaia note, she guessed that living in the Forest of Death may not be that tough. Recognizing the green fur, Lydia asked if Rent also hunted the beast. Lydia explained that the deer was a strong monster as it could stretch its horns at will. Seeing Hashira's surprised look, Lydia wondered if they really fought the monster. As the two continued their conversation, Hashira knew that Lydia wasn't fully healed yet and offered her to stay in his home for a while. Lydia was delighted by the offer and immediately accepted it. Lydia then asked a request from Hashira. She wanted to tour inside the vast forest. Lydia was confident that if she was with Hashira and Rent, then it would be possible. Returning the favor, Lydia promised to do whatever she could. When Hashira heard that Lydia was willing to help with anything, he then explained that he needed help with farm work. Hashira then asked Lydia if she could lend a hand. Surprised by Hashira's request, Lydia did not expect for Hashira to have a farm, and accepted the terms Hashira gave. Grateful for the help, Hashira then gave Lydia a house tour. The night ended with Lydia deciding to stay at Hashira's home. Hashira practiced his shooting skills and thought he was in good form when his first arrow hit the target. He was shocked when Rent tried shooting the arrow and almost hit the center of the target. Embarrassed that he was bested by Rent, Hashira made an excuse when Lydia found them and greeted them with a good morning. When Hashira asked if Lydia had slept well, she responded that she indeed had, since the leaves she slept on were so soft and the fur kept her warm. Hashira was happy speaking with someone since he hadn't spoken to anyone since the gods transmigrated him. Seeing the archery range, Hashira explained that it was just a hobby of his. Hashira remembered that he had only shown Lydia the inside of the house last night, to which Lydia found the architectural style unusual. However, she was very impressed at how sturdy the house was, even though it was built in the middle of a large forest. Lydia wondered if Hashira was some sort of architect. Hashira explained that he was not an architect but rather had built the house using his own abilities. Seeing Lydia becoming confused by his explanation, Hashira showed his ability by making a tree grow and manipulating its shape. Hashira wondered what was wrong after seeing Lydia's confused expression. Lydia wondered if Hashira was a great spirit lord since he had a Gaia note at his command. This surprised Hashira, and he asked Lydia not to treat him with such reverence as he was just a human. Wrongly assuming that Hashira was some guardian spirit, Lydia explained that as a descendant of a spirit, it was natural for elves to show respect to such beings. After clarifying it to Lydia, Hashira just asked her to treat him normally. When Hashira suggested that they check on the fields, Lydia requested to shoot the bow as she felt her body was sluggish. Assuming that elves were masters of bow and arrow, Hashira expected Lydia to try shooting some. After lending his bow and arrow, Hashira explained that the equipment may not be the best, since it was made by a novice. After receiving a compliment on the bow he made, Hashira became curious and asked if Lydia had been walking around unarmed the whole time. Lydia responded that she had been carrying a weapon, but sadly her bow had been destroyed by the armored bear. As Lydia stretched her arms and aimed for the target, Hashira was amazed when Lydia continuously hit the target. When Lydia revealed that any elf could do what she displayed, this made Hashira even more impressed. Hashira then asked Lydia to teach him how to shoot since he didn't hit the target very often. After accepting Hashira's request, Lydia started teaching Hashira how to shoot. However, she was immediately disappointed with his shooting ability. After instructing Hashira on how to properly shoot an arrow, Hashira was surprised when Lydia got really close while giving him instructions. After pushing himself to concentrate, Hashira was then instructed to maintain his position and release his fingers. When Hashira was able to hit the target, he was very happy since he felt that it was the best connection he had so far. When he tried shooting the arrow again, he was disappointed right away, as his arrow did not land near the target. While explaining to Hashira the mistakes he had made in the second shot, Hashira was in total disbelief when Rent shot his arrow and hit the target again. Their practice session ended with Hashira becoming annoyed for being bested by Rent. After some time, they finally finished with the fields and decided to eat breakfast. After showing the crops that were harvested in the field, Hashira asked Lydia if she had eaten any of the vegetables before. Lydia responded that except for the udo, she had not seen the rest of the vegetables before. Curious about the peculiar fruit, Lydia asked what it was. Hashira explained that it was the mochi fruit, a fruit used as a staple food. Lydia, who was embarrassed at first, had a piece of the mochi fruit and was immediately delighted at how delicious it was. Seeing that Lydia liked the fruit, Hashira revealed that there were still more to eat. Reminded that Lydia had only eaten udo before, Hashira asked her to try the udo he grew if they were tasty. Upon tasting the udo, Lydia was surprised since it was much tastier than what she had eaten before. Excited at how delicious the vegetables were, Lydia wondered if it must be because Hashira took care of it. Hashira was thankful for the blessing given by Elfiura that the crops he grew were very delicious. When Lydia asked if she could try another mochi fruit, Hashira asked if she wanted one that's roasted. Accepting the offer, Hashira immediately cooked a mochi fruit and gave it to Lydia. Hashira then told her to eat and be ready for the afternoon. Lydia was then reminded of the Forest of Death tour and became more excited since Hashira and Rent were with her. When Lydia asked if she could borrow a bow and arrow for protection, Hashira gladly agreed to provide it to her as long as she did not push herself too much. After finishing the roasted mochi fruit, the group then prepared themselves and headed out to the forest. Seeing how massive the trees inside the Forest of Death were, Lydia wondered how old the trees were. When Hashira asked if Lydia liked nature, she responded affirmatively, mentioning that it was just an elven trait. Lydia explained that as elves, they instinctively preferred living amidst nature. Learning more about elves, Hashira became curious and asked Lydia if the place where she used to live was also rich in nature. Lydia responded that indeed the place was a rich forest but not as extensive as the Forest of Death. Lydia shared that she got bored with the monotonous life and ended up traveling to various places. When Lydia asked Hashira where he lived before living inside the Forest of Death, Hashira pondered how to explain his former world. When Hashira explained it to Lydia, she imagined that it was a hellish place and guessed that living there must have been tough for Hashira. When Hashira shared how his family kept him stronger, Lydia was surprised and immediately apologized. Initially confused, Hashira then realized how he phrased his words, which made it seem like he had lost his family even though he was the one who died. Wanting to explain it to Lydia but finding it too complicated, Hashira simply told Lydia that it was fine. Changing the topic, Hashira asked about the lifestyles of the elves. Hashira was amazed when Lydia explained that their residence was not that different, as most of what they used came from trees. Becoming more curious about the elves, Hashira wanted to confirm if the elves also ate meat. Lydia explained that elves also had preferences but essentially ate just like humans. As an example, Lydia pointed at a rabbit and told Hashira that they often hunted rabbits. Hashira was in total disbelief that Lydia was able to spot the rabbit from such a far distance. Proving that she could hunt the rabbit, Lydia asked permission to shoot it down using the bow and arrow that Hashira lent. Hashira agreed as he liked the idea of having more meat to eat. After focusing on aiming at the rabbit, Lydia was able to hit it from such a far distance. Hashira was very impressed with Lydia's skills as he himself admitted that it was impossible for him to shoot through obstacles. Curious about how Hashira would usually hunt, Lydia asked Hashira. When Hashira explained that he bound his target with roots and demonstrated it to Lydia, she was in total disbelief at what she had witnessed. Holding the bird that Hashira caught, Lydia admitted that Hashira was the strongest in the forest. After roaming for a while, Hashira and Lydia noticed a sweet aroma in the area. Lydia wondered if there were flowers around from which they could get quality honey. Imagining the honey, Hashira thought that it would be a good complement to the soft fruit. When Lydia followed the sweet scent, they were surprised to learn that it came from a killer plant. Killer plants were monstrous carnivorous plants that used beautiful flowers and scent to lure humans and animals and devour them with its feeding mechanism. Upon learning that it was a plant, Hashira remained unfazed. However, Lydia was already at a far distance, informing Hashira that they had to escape. Lydia was confused when Hashira told her that they were just fine. When the killer plant finally made its move and was about to lunge at Hashira and Lydia, Hashira summoned his staff and ordered the killer plant to hold still. Lydia finally realized what Hashira meant, that even though it was a monster, it was still a plant that Hashira could control. Amazed by the special abilities of the killer plant, Hashira shared the idea of planting it near the fields as a good countermeasure. Thinking that Hashira's plan was crazy, Lydia explained that the killer plant would not follow orders. However, she again could not believe that Hashira was able to convince the killer plant to transfer where he lives and asked for it to protect the crops. After collecting the animals they captured earlier, the two headed back to the house and planted the killer plant near the fields. Surprised at how fast the killer plant grew, Lydia wondered if it remembered them. In response to Lydia's question, the plant nodded. After introducing himself Lydia and Rent, Hashira asked the killer plant to protect their fields from harmful beasts and insects. In exchange, they would take care of the killer plant. All of a sudden, the killer plant gave Hashira a seed. Curious about what it was, Hashira was pleased after learning about the benefits of the insect killer seed. Noticing that the killer plant they had planted was slightly different from a regular killer plant, Lydia was startled when the plant easily killed and ate a fly near her. Later that night, Lydia wanted to ask something from Hashira. Wondering if it was about the rabbit meat, Hashira showed her the meat and told her that it was almost done. When Lydia asked about the stones she found in the shed, Hashira explained that he obtained the stones after hunting down monsters. Hashira added that he kept them with the thought of exchanging them for money. When Lydia explained that the stones were called magic stones which contained the magical power of monsters, Hashira was relieved that he decided to save the stones. Wondering if Hashira could not use magic, Hashira revealed that he could not use magic. Lydia finally realized why Hashira needed to use his hands to create fire and draw water. Lydia explained that magical capability varied greatly with practice, and that with continued practice, Hashira should be able to use magic. After holding Hashira's hands and checking if he was capable of using magic, Lydia found that Hashira's affinity was for water and wind, and that his affinity for earth magic was extremely high. When Lydia mentioned that fire was a poor match for Hashira, he thought that it may be a consequence of having the blessing. Hashira became curious and asked Lydia how he could practice magic. After explaining the first things he needed to be aware of, Hashira was grateful for Lydia's guidance and remembered that he also needed to keep working on his archery. At the demon kingdom of Belgios, where the demon lord's castle was located, a demon servant named Claire was looking for another demon called Lady. Not wishing to go back into her room, Lady tried sneaking away. However, Claire immediately found her. When Lady used her wings and flew away from the castle, Claire instructed the demons who were flying to catch Lady. However, they were no match for Lady. Realizing that the creatures inside the Forest of Death could give her a good fight, Lady decided to head to the Forest of Death. Meditating during the day, Hashira followed Lydia's instructions to gather magic power at his fingertips first. From the fingers, he gradually spread the magic throughout his entire body, as the goal of the practice was to manipulate magic freely. Unfortunately for Hashira, he was already having difficulty maintaining the magic power in his fingertips. Recognizing his struggles, Hashira told himself that as an ordinary office worker recently, being able to sense magic power was still a good start. When Lydia and Rent finally returned, Hashira was impressed that they had brought back another animal they could eat. Lydia explained that the animal was called a devil fang, a formidable demon, but Rent took it down with just a single punch. After praising Rent, Hashira then left the dissection of the animal to him. When handing the magic stones, everyone was surprised to see the magic stone being swallowed by the soil after Hashira accidentally dropped it. Hashira then noticed the crops grew larger. Curious as to what it could mean, Hashira shared that it was different from his growth promotion. Instead of absorbing nutrients, it was using the magic power of the stones as nutrients. Hashira then thought of the magic stones as good fertilizer for his crops. Thinking that Hashira's field was unusual, Hashira was surprised, as he thought his field was just ordinary. Deciding to use the high-quality magic stones for the crops, Hashira's attention was suddenly caught by the killer plant as it wanted to have the magic stones. After feeding the killer plant with magic stones, Hashira was happy to learn that he could now use the magic stones he saved as fertilizer replacement. Meanwhile, above them, Lady called their attention and asked what they were doing. Lydia immediately recognized Lady as a high-ranking demon. Responding to Lady's question, Hashira told her that they were taking care of their field since they lived inside the forest. After introducing themselves, Hashira asked for Lady's name. Seeing a human and an elf living together, Lady found it interesting. She then introduced herself as Carmilla Lasis Redcruz, daughter of the Demon Lord. Curious as to why the daughter of the Demon Lord was in the Forest of Death, Lydia assessed that Carmilla was telling the truth and suggested that they try to communicate with her. Seeing Hashira's house, Carmilla assumed that Hashira had cleared the Forest of Death and decided to live inside it. After Carmilla accepted Hashira's offer to try some of his prized crops, he was wary at first since she was a demon, but realized that Carmilla was just an innocent child. After introducing the mochi mochi fruit, Hashira gave one to Carmilla for her to taste. Delighted that it was soft, Carmilla then took a bite and was immediately in love with the food. When Hashira recommended the wild vegetables, Hashira realized that Carmilla was indeed just a child after refusing to eat vegetables. Seeing the gravelin apple nearby, Carmilla wanted to grab some when Lydia asked her to stop. Hashira then explained that the fruit wasn't ripe yet. However, Carmilla could not be convinced, which made Hashira decide to give her one. After taking a bite of the apple, Carmilla could not believe how delicious it was. After offering one to Lydia, Hashira explained that even though it was not yet ripe, the fruit was still delicious. Carmilla could not believe that the fruit she ate could become even more delicious when it's ripe. Hearing the compliments and seeing the people becoming happy after eating his crops made Hashira very happy. After finishing the apple, Carmilla decided and announced that the place would be hers. Surprised by Carmilla's announcement, Hashira asked her what she meant. Carmilla clarified to Hashira and Lydia that the field would now belong to her, and that Hashira and Lydia would continue to produce delicious crops solely for her benefit. Seeing Hashira's confused expression, Carmilla was surprised, as she had thought that offering the field to her, the daughter of the demon lord, would be an honor for them. Lydia intervened, explaining to Carmilla that while the great forest may belong to the demon king's nation, it remained an unclaimed territory that nobody controlled. Annoyed by Lydia's words, Carmilla angrily responded that she did not care about such complications and that her word was law. Overwhelmed by Carmilla's magical power, Hashira felt as if he were being pierced all over his body. Though he acknowledged Carmilla's power, Hashira still refused to hand over the field he had tended to since the day he arrived. When Hashira made it clear that he would not yield to Carmilla's unreasonable demands, she decided to use her power to force him to comply. Lydia, horrified, pleaded with Carmilla to stop as she witnessed the trees being burned. Hashira acted swiftly, using his abilities to manipulate the trees' bodies to prevent them from catching fire, and then asked Lydia to use her magic to extinguish the flames. Confused, Hashira asked Carmilla why she wanted to burn the field if it was what she desired. Hashira became angry when Carmilla mentioned that she did not care as long as he could restore the field. Seeing Hashira summon his weapon, Carmilla smiled and prepared herself for a fight. When Hashira summoned multiple vines from the ground, Carmilla was caught off guard, as she did not expect him to be able to control plants. After using her own magic to destroy the vines, Hashira informed Carmilla that she could never escape him within the forest. Vines emerged once again from the thick smoke, surprising Carmilla as she was immediately subdued. As Carmilla attempted to cast a spell, she wondered why she could not produce magic. Eventually, she realized that Hashira was draining her magic. Overpowered by Hashira's vines, she was informed that he would not stop until she ran out of magical power. Fortunately for Carmilla, Lydia intervened, reasoning with Hashira that Carmilla's death would only lead to an endless war. As Hashira slowly calmed down, he decided to release Carmilla and apologize to Lydia for getting carried away. Witnessing Carmilla suffer from magic depletion, Hashira returned home to retrieve a recovery potion. Before leaving, he thanked Lydia for stopping him. Lydia understood Hashira's anger as a natural reaction, but she couldn't forget Carmilla's actions. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.